All right, guys, how's it going? First off, if you're new to the channel, which you probably are, it's basically a brand new channel. Go ahead, like and subscribe if you would like. Would help out the channel, would make me very happy. So yeah, I mean, you see the title of the video. We're just basically going to talk about the AFC North, Pittsburgh, and just kind of break down what's going to be happening at a Week 15, what I expect to happen going forward throughout the rest of the regular season. So, and we'll start with Pittsburgh. I mean, there's what 6-1 right now. Going into a game against Tennessee, that's winnable. It is a winnable game. The fact that it's at home definitely helps. I think last time I checked the odds, they were 1.5 underdogs to Tennessee. This is a winnable game for the Steelers. Now, Julio Jones has come back. I do believe A.J. Brown is coming back. I'll have to pull that up. But if they have both of them, I know A.J. Brown was gone for a number of weeks. Julio Jones missed a number of games. So they're getting, much more firepower on offense. They still don't have Derrick Henry. So if you're a Steelers fan, if you're the Steelers in general, I mean, we saw what Dalvin Cook did to them last Thursday. So if Derrick Henry was healthy, he would have a very good chance of replicating and probably exceeding what Dalvin Cook did on Thursday, who ran for, I believe, 208 yards against the Steelers. My God. So it obviously plays into the hand of Pittsburgh that that Derrick Henry isn't playing. That definitely helps out their case. One thing that could be going against Pittsburgh, though, is that Joe Hayden didn't practice again with an injured foot. If they don't have Joe Hayden, like we've seen what the secondary is, like we saw it against Los Angeles, saw it against Minnesota, saw it against Cincinnati. Like so many teams have just been able to torch them through the air because they don't have any depth at the position. Like Ahkello Witherspoon stepped up a little bit. Good for him. He's not really a number one guy that they can look at to replace Joe Hayden. Cam Sutton's had his moments. James Pierre's been bad. Like he got beat against Cincinnati for like the upteenth time this year. Second time against Cincinnati. This time it was against T. Higgins. First time it was against Jamar Chase. So they have no depth at the cornerback position right now, and that's killing them. And not to mention the fact that their run defense is atrocious and their linebackers aren't good. Like Devin Bush hasn't looked good at all throughout the year, with the exception of a few pops, but he hasn't looked good. And then saw Buddy Johnson, okay, against the Vikings, and Mike Tomlin said that we could see more of him going forward, which makes sense just because you look at how Bush is playing, you look how Schobert's been playing, the other linebackers that they've brought in to try to make some sort of noise, none of them have been that great. So it's understandable why Tomlin will want to see what he has in Buddy Johnson. They drafted him for a reason. So you might as well see what you have. But as a whole, like, not really a lot to be excited about on the defensive side of the ball. Tomlin said that he expects, or that TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith both could play Sunday. And if both of them are gone, then that's just going to make this an even harder game for Pittsburgh, and a game that they absolutely have to win. So, yeah, if you're the Steelers right now, man, it's not looking great. In terms of just the teams that are in front of them and everything, like they're not far out of this. Like they're still technically, they're at the bottom of the barrel. The Colts just moved into a playoff spot. Cleveland is now sitting at 7-6. But you look at the Steelers' remaining schedule, like they can win this Sunday. I think they're going to win this Sunday against Tennessee. Then they go to Arrowhead the day after Christmas. Don't think they're winning that game. But then they face Cleveland, and what is very likely to be Ben Roethlisberger's final game at Heinz Field. Don't think they're losing that game. And then they go to Baltimore, who their record makes them look a lot better than what they have been this year, but they haven't been all that great this year. Throw in the fact that Lamar Jackson's dealing with an injury now, they can beat Baltimore. So if you're Pittsburgh, if the Steelers go 3-1 down this stretch, I think they're a playoff team. Because you look at what the Ravens have. They've got Green Bay this week. Then they have Cincinnati again. And then they close out with the Rams and the Steelers. They could very well lose all of those. And that would put them at 8-9 on the year. I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to win more than 2 of them, though. And if Baltimore goes 9-8 and Pittsburgh beats them and goes 9-7-1, well, guess what? Pittsburgh's ahead of Baltimore in the standings. So this is a very good place to be in for the Steelers, just because every team in the AFC North, they're all within a game of each other, or a game it's like a game and a half of each other. And all of them have relatively difficult schedules, and I think Pittsburgh has the easiest out of all of them. Now, you can make the case for Cincinnati. They play the Broncos this weekend. Let me actually pull up the Bengals' remaining schedule because I know it's that there's a lot of similarities in this because each team is playing the NFC North this year. So let me look. All right, so the Bengals go to Denver this week, then they host Baltimore, then they host Kansas City, and then they close out against Cleveland. I think they beat Denver this weekend. I think that they lose to Baltimore. I don't think they're beating Baltimore twice. I think they lose to Kansas City. I think they beat Cleveland. I think the Bengals go 2-2 down the stretch, which would put them at, I believe, that would put them at 9-8 on the year. Which again, if Pittsburgh finishes 9-7-1, Pittsburgh would have the advantage. So while that tie is a pain in the ass for Pittsburgh, they would have much rather had a win. It's better than what a loss would have been. It's 9-7-1 is better than 9-8. And then we look at Cleveland. To me, I'm not worried about Cleveland. I mean, right now they've got, I think, 14 guys on the COVID list who more than likely aren't playing. A lot of them aren't playing tomorrow. That's just going to be a given. Some of them might test negative or whatever and be able to play on Saturday, against the Raiders. Even then, though, don't think they're beating Vegas with that much going on. And that'll put them at 7-7 on the year. I don't think that Cleveland's going to really make a run. I think Pittsburgh beats them again. So, yes, while they currently sit ahead of Pittsburgh, I'm not worried about Cleveland. And then, like we already said, Baltimore is a team where they have a tough remaining schedule. They're without their two top cornerbacks, and their passing defense is the worst in the NFL. Don't really have any reliable weapons offensively. Like Rashad Bateman, since he came back, has been pretty good. Marquise Brown isn't a number one receiver. I think that's fair to say that. He's a very good number two. He's not a number one. He's too inconsistent, drops too many balls. He's not a number one receiver. Mark Andrews is a fantastic tight end, but they don't really have any running backs that they can turn to as reliable. Like Devontae Freeman's had his moments, sure, but no one's looking at the Ravens. I don't think anybody's looking at the Ravens offense right now, looking at a player besides Lamar Jackson and saying, how can we stop them? They don't have any stars on that side of the ball besides Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. Those are the two guys that they have. Outside of that, like their offensive line, Devin Zeitler's been a good pickup. Outside of that, though, losing Orlando Brown hurt, replacing him with Al Villanueva, that hasn't done much. I'm not worried about Baltimore either. And if you're Pittsburgh, that's great too, because they already beat Baltimore. Their pass defense isn't good. And now neither is Pittsburgh's, but when you face Baltimore, you don't necessarily need a great pass defense. And they showed that, hey, even when Baltimore can run the ball a little bit, they're a bend, don't break unit. And when they get into the red zone, Pittsburgh held their own. And they had the Minka Fitzpatrick interception on the first drive. That was big. And that kind of set the tone for the rest of the game where Pittsburgh is going to be like, all right, we're going to be this bend, don't break unit. We're going to hold you when we need to. And of course, that happened until the final drive of the game when Baltimore scored and they could have kicked the extra point to go in overtime. Luckily, they didn't for Pittsburgh, because that obviously led to a Steeler win. So the thing about Pittsburgh right now is the teams that you got to worry about as we pull up the standings in the AFC. I'll just pull up the AFC standings right now, and we can go through it. So the teams that they really have to worry about are the Chargers. But even then, the teams are locks for the playoffs, basically. It's going to be the Patriots. It'll be the Chiefs. It'll be Buffalo will be in. Tennessee will be in. Those are kind of your four locks right now. Everything else is up in the air. I think the Chargers will make it. So if we go through, New England, Kansas City, Los Angeles Chargers, Tennessee. Those are kind of the four locks for me right now in the AFC. AFC North can go either way. Baltimore's at 8-5 right now, but they can easily finish 8-9, 9-8. Cleveland's 7-6. I think they lose this weekend, and they could probably finish 8-9, honestly, too. I don't think they're getting in. Same thing with Cincinnati. I think the best at Cincinnati, I don't think Cincinnati is going to go 3-1 down the stretch. I think they'll split them. So that'll put them at 9-8. And then if you're Pittsburgh, if the Steelers can win 3 of these last games and get to 9-7-1, they can win the division. Realistically. They'll need a little bit of help from teams like Green Bay this Sunday and the Rams down the road and the Chiefs. But that's a realistic thing. Even if they don't win the division, let's say that Baltimore, goes 10-7, Pittsburgh can still be a wild card team. Like Buffalo will be a playoff team. So, we've got the Patriots, the Bills. The Bills have a very easy remaining schedule. They're fine. I think they're still going to win the AFC East, by the way. And you can go back and watch Laces Out with Kurt and I. I tweeted out the video of my thoughts on that. And you can follow me on Twitter at JBaileyNFL to find all that. So the Patriots, I think they're going to be a wild card team. I think the Bills will win the division. So that's 2 from the AFC East and then the 2 from the AFC West with the Chiefs and the Chargers. And then Tennessee. Those are like the 5 that I can see definitely getting in. I think the Colts are also going to get in. So that's 6 in my mind. And then you've got, that one playoff spot left. Like, I'm not worried about Miami. I don't think Miami's going to get in. You look at, I think Pittsburgh has the best chance. You could say that that's bias of me or whatnot, but you look at their schedule, like it's doable. They can beat Cleveland again. They can beat Baltimore again. They should be able to beat Tennessee this Sunday. You look at other teams like Cleveland, like they're falling apart at the seams. Baltimore's the same way. So those are the things that when we look at it, I think that Pittsburgh is sitting we look at Pittsburgh, we see all the flaws and whatnot. There are definitely flaws there. But Tennessee's not a perfect team by any means, especially offensively. Defensively, they're better than a lot of people expected. Offensively, there's a lot to be desired there. Now, I don't think they're going into Arrowhead and winning the day after Christmas. I'm sharping that in as a loss. But can they beat Cleveland again? Absolutely. Can they beat Baltimore again? Absolutely. And especially the circumstances surrounding those games where the game against Cleveland is going to be Ben Roethlisberger's final game at Heinz Field. That's going to be like Jerome Bettis' last game times 100. Like, Ben Roethlisberger has been the quarterback in Pittsburgh for almost 20 years. It's going to be an emotional day. And what better way for him to end it than by sweeping the team that he has owned for 2 decades, doing it at home one last time, and then leading into a game that quite possibly could be for the division in Baltimore, a place that he's owned for the past 20 years. That seems almost poetic. And then you're in a position where, okay, we beat Baltimore, we're in the playoffs. How many times has that been the narrative? How many times have we seen that where it's Steelers-Ravens for the division? What better way to do that for Ben Roethlisberger in his final year to go into Baltimore, week 18, win the division for Pittsburgh? Yeah, look, I don't think Pittsburgh's going to win a playoff game this year. I don't. Even if they win the division, they're going to be the 4 seed. They're going to face the Chargers, and they're going to get wiped out. Because as great as Ben played against Los Angeles, in Los Angeles, it took a monumental comeback like it did against Minnesota. It took a big comeback to get them back into the game. They took the lead, but the defense ultimately blew it. I think the Chargers are just getting better at this time of the year. I think that is where we would see those things come in. I think the Chargers will win that game. Even if it's New England, if the Steelers would face the Patriots, that is the one game where I could look at that and be like, I think Pittsburgh can win that. Because you look at the Patriots offense, there is nothing there that any opposing team should be worried about. Defensively, they're great. But no NFL coach in their right mind is being kept awake at night thinking, how the hell are we going to stop Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne? No one's doing that. And so if they were to face the Patriots in the wild card round, assuming that they win the division, the Bills win the AFC East, and the Patriots are the 5 seed, that's where I would look at it and be like, I think they can win that game. But that's, or maybe if the Colts storm back and finish with a 3 seed, I mean, they'd have to basically win out, and the Titans are the 5. I think the Steelers could beat the Titans again. It's hard to beat. Now, Derrick Henry probably back at that point. And then A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, if they're both still healthy, along with getting Derrick Henry back, that would be a tough game to win, simply because the Titans could just run the ball every play and win, because the Steelers' run defense is atrocious. So that is one where, like, offensively, there's factors that could help them, but the only game that I would be like extremely confident in them winning would be a home playoff game against New England. Because as great as Bill Belichick is and as good as that defense has been, they faced a lot of bad teams on this little run that they've gone on. A lot of depleted teams too. Like they faced the Jets twice. They almost lost to the Texans. They beat Sam Darnold and the Panthers. They blew out a Titans team that was without Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, and Derrick Henry. Like, that's great. And then you beat Buffalo, but in a game that's 35-mile-an-hour winds and just weird circumstances. I think the Bills are going to beat New England in the second matchup in Foxborough here in a couple weeks. So, like, yes, it's impressive to go on that type of win streak. Context is needed for it, though, because when we look at the context, it's taken down a little bit. But in terms of what the Steelers can do, I think that they can go 3-1 down the stretch. I think there's still a very realistic chance that they win the division, simply because everybody in front of them, like everybody else in the AFC North, has very clear weaknesses. For Baltimore, it's their pass defense, and their offense just has a lack of star power. Throw in the fact that Lamar Jackson's injured, that's not great. Like, that's going to affect him throughout the next few weeks with the sprained foot, I believe it was. So that's not great. And then for Cleveland, I mean, everything for Cleveland, like Baker Mayfield is a shell of himself right now because he's injured all over the place. We know how good their defense is, but offensively, there's so much of a liability. They just can't put up points. So Pittsburgh can put up enough points to beat the Browns. We saw them win a low-scoring battle earlier in the year in Cleveland. The fact that the Browns will be coming to Pittsburgh week 17, that's not a gimme for the Browns. And then Cincinnati, like, as great as Joe Burrow has been, he's also been a turnover machine. I think he's got, 14 or 15 interceptions on the year? He's leading the league in interceptions. Last time I checked, at least. Now, Trevor Lawrence might have taken over that mantle this past week because he threw 4 against the Titans. So I think actually Trevor Lawrence might be the league leader at this point. But Joe Burrow is still right near the top of that leaderboard. And the Bengals also suffer from either being really unstoppable or unable to contain anybody. Like we saw it against the Chargers, where the Chargers jumped out to a 24-3 lead. The Bengals started storming back, sure. And if not for that Joe Mixon fumble, I think they do take the lead. I still think the Chargers ultimately win that game. But you look at the plays that they gave up. The long touchdown pass to Jalen Guyton, I believe it was. Mike Williams had a very good first half. Austin Eckler was everybody was getting involved for the Chargers. Cincinnati couldn't stop them. Eventually their offense got going and in a rhythm, but at that point it was too late. So the Bengals suffer from either being unstoppable or unable to do anything. There doesn't seem to be a middle ground with Cincinnati. And Pittsburgh, they have their own problems. Their run defense is horrid. And they tend to be – the thing with the Steelers, and I haven't even mentioned this yet, is Matt Canada's play calling is terrible. They only seem to be getting into a flow in the second half when they go up-tempo. Just let Ben Roethlisberger go up-tempo throughout the game. It works. Like, why are we straying away from something that clearly works just to prove that Matt Canada was a good hire? I don't get that at all either. So if the Steelers allowed Ben Roethlisberger and the offense to do what works, then they're fine. We've seen that in the second half against The Chargers saw it in the second half against the Vikings, where they've had to come back from these big deficits because their defense can't stop anybody. But that's going to be their one big thing, is that their defense isn't good. Offensively, they can get the job done if they go up tempo. Ben Roethlisberger has played in the Charger game and the Viking game. That is the best that Ben Roethlisberger has looked since his elbow surgery. He has looked fantastic. And it's a shame that it was all for naught because the defense is that bad. But they can win 3 of 4. I don't think they're going to beat Kansas City. I think they win against Tennessee. They'll lose to the Chiefs, and then I think they beat the Browns and Ravens. Gets them to 9-7-1. Might get them a division title. I think it would definitely give them a playoff spot. Even if it's the 7 seed and they got to go to Buffalo, which has been their friendly rival for the past few years. And we saw Pittsburgh beat Buffalo in week 1. Don't think they would do it again, but if they beat Buffalo twice, that would be something, wouldn't it? So they would go probably to Buffalo, because I think the Chiefs are going to be the number 1 seed. I think the Bills win out and get the number 2 seed at 11-6. And then I think the 3 seed would be whoever wins the AFC South, whether that be Indianapolis or Tennessee. And then the winner of the AFC North would be 4. So if the Steelers win the division, I think they're going to face the Chargers in the wild card round and lose. If the Chargers lose a few and like the Patriots somehow get the 5 seed, I don't know if there's really a situation where that could happen. The Patriots are 9-4 right now. But if the Bills win out, then they're going to win the division. Because if they beat the Patriots and the Patriots, I think the Patriots will go at least 2-2 down the stretch. If the Bills win out, that gives them the division title because they have a better record in division. So that would put the Patriots at that point at 11-6. So it's possible that they would be the 5 seed at that point. I still think the Chargers are going to finish with as good of, or if not a better record than the Patriots. But like I said, if the Steelers host the Patriots in this circumstantial, hypothetical playoff scenario, if the Steelers host the Patriots in Wild Card Weekend, I think they win that game. That's the only one I'm pretty confident in them winning, will be against New England. Like if they were to host the Chargers, I think they lose that game. If the Chargers somehow win the division and they host Kansas City, they're absolutely losing that game. But the circumstances surrounding the remainder of this year, knowing that it's Ben's final in Pittsburgh, a win against Cleveland in his final home game, I think will happen. I think they can beat Baltimore on the road, possibly for the division, definitely for a playoff spot. I think it can be done. In terms of what happens with the rest of the AFC North, I think that Cleveland's probably the least threatening out of all the remaining teams just because their offense is that dead. Defense is very good. But Baltimore, I mean, you could say that Baltimore's the least threatening. I wouldn't argue that just because Baltimore has been on the luckier end of a bunch of comeback wins, a bunch of crazy plays, crazy finishes. That isn't a sustainable way to win throughout a season. So they've been the beneficiary of that. And then Cincinnati, like they're good, but they're kind of inconsistent. They don't really have a middle ground between being very good and just bad. So if they found a middle ground, I think that they would be a lot better. I think they split their remaining 2 games down the stretch. I think they beat Denver. I think they beat Cleveland. I think they lose to Kansas City. I think they lose to Baltimore. I think Baltimore's only win is against Cincinnati for the rest of the year. I think they're going to lose to Green Bay. They're going to beat Baltimore. They're going to lose to the Rams. Who the hell is going to cover the Rams receivers? Who's going to stop Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham, and Van Jefferson for 3 hours for Baltimore? Nobody. The Rams are going to go spread for 3 hours, and they're going to dice up the Ravens. I think that's going to be a blowout. I think they're going to go to Baltimore and win by 2 touchdowns. Probably more. Because the Rams' defense has been pretty good as well. I think that's a game that the Rams win by minimum 15. So when we get there, once the spread and whatnot opens up, the betting lines for it, I suspect the Rams to be like 6.5-point favorites. Probably not though, because they're traveling cross country. They might only be like 4.5-point favorites against Baltimore because they're going to be favored. I would definitely look at the alternate spreads for that and go like 11-12 because that'll probably put them at like plus 210 at that point. I think minimum they win by 15. So that, I think the Ravens go 1-3 down the stretch. I think Pittsburgh goes 3-1. I think that's the best case scenario for Pittsburgh. Like, I understand that that's me being somewhat biased and very optimistic. I think that the Steelers can very well do it, though. That'd get them 9-7-1. Would give them a playoff spot, potentially a division win in Ben's final year. And then, if they face the Chargers in the wild card round, they're going to lose. If the Chargers win the division and they face the Chiefs, they're going to lose. If they face the Patriots, I think they win. I really do. If they face Buffalo somehow, I think they lose. The only game that I really see them winning is New England, or if they somehow face Tennessee, but even then Derrick Henry's going to be back. I think they lose that game too. So that's kind of the state of the Steelers right now. In terms of this playoff outlook, state of the AFC North, that's what I see happening. Other than that, though, man, like that is where I see the AFC North going in terms of the playoffs. Now, if you want like a full playoff breakdown, I might do one of those after week 15, and then we can go from there. I think that's probably what I'll do, though. I'll just do like a full playoff breakdown episode of what I think will happen. I'll do an episode for each conference, maybe. So if you want more on the NFC, I'll do that next week after all the games happen, just to give us a clearer picture, and then we can go from there. But yeah, if you're new to the channel, like and subscribe. I appreciate it. It's a brand new channel. It's very, not a lot of content on it yet. Just starting to do it, trying to push more stuff. But yeah, if you follow me on Twitter already, at JBaileyNFL, you know that this is something I've wanted to start doing. If not, you can go follow me on Twitter at JBaileyNFL. You can follow the Laces Out Pod. Me and Kurt do it, at least once a week. In terms of fan-sided, that's where you can find all my written work for whether it's historical pieces or on Steel Curtain, writing about the Steelers. So go follow my work there. Fan-sided also has Stack in the Box every week with Matt Verderam and Max Carmen. The Matt Lombardo Show, Between the Hashes with Matt Lombardo. Bunch of good stuff going on there. Matt Verderam's quarterback rankings and power rankings every week. So go check out all of that on Fan-sided. A lot of stuff that we're doing there. That's a lot of fun. So go check all of that out. Again, follow me on Twitter at JBaileyNFL. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. And like I said, we'll do a few more playoff predictions after this week going into week 16. We'll have 3 weeks left at that point. I'll just kind of break down how I see things going for each team. And then I'll do like my playoff predictions and whatnot ahead of week 16, how I see it shaping out. So again, appreciate anybody who's tuning in. I'll see you next week to keep talking about this more, and we'll see how